Hello, and thank you for joining us. We're excited here at American Innovations to lead today's discussion on maximizing your pipeline survey data experience with PCS Axis 114. We'll kick off the discussion with just a few introductory slides and then dive right into our live demo, which I know we're all waiting for. For those of you newer to our PCS family of products, I am Christopher Shawhan, Director of Product Management, and I'm joined today by David Gautier, one of our software product managers and resident PCS Axis guru. Here at American Innovations, David and I, along with the rest of our product team, are passionate about helping you achieve your goals with protecting and managing our energy infrastructure. We do that by aligning our products and professional services around your activities. For today's discussion, we're focusing on PCS Axis 114 and the compliance survey management, but it is just one of the solutions we provide to manage your survey data lifecycle. With PCS Axis 114, we've extended your survey options by adding some key capabilities for users that want to incorporate inline inspection data or build their own custom facility types in one of our existing modules. David is going to walk us through those specifically, and for the ILI data, I think we've added it in a way that allows far more accessibility than keeping it isolated as a separate module. For those of you less familiar with PCS, these are an image of all the modules and capabilities at a higher level that we have within PCS. While we would love to talk about PCS capabilities all day long, we'll keep our discussion limited to some of the key improvements. I have those listed here. For the full release notes, they're accessible on our aiworldwide.com website, and we'll also share a web link in a follow-up email after today's webinar. So enough slides for today. I'll turn it over to David and we'll go right into the live demo. So David, it's all yours.
Thanks, Christopher. One of the most visible changes that you're going to see in PCS 114 is related to the way that we're launching the data grid, rather the order that the filters are presented. It's been a challenge historically when you load the data grid to get to the facility and record type that you want to.
Yeah, I'd say, David, that's probably one of our biggest call drivers in the support area as well, is I can't see my data, I've launched my grid, I don't know where it is. So how do we help with that?
Exactly, yeah. 90% of the time it's filters are the problem. And we're going to help in 114 by launching your filters initially when you load the data grid. This does a few things here. We can immediately add ad hoc filters, permanent filters, confirm that your layout is good, and also make sure that you're on the right record type. By default, PCS is going to put me on test point information, but maybe I really wanted to look at foreign bond inspections. Historically, in PCS Axis and PCS version 7, anytime I was changing between facility types or record types, my data grid would load each time. So we've optimized the performance there with a simple tweak by launching your options before we load the data grid.
Yeah, that seemed much faster for you to navigate through those tabs and make the right selection.
Absolutely. This setting is toggleable so that if you go through and you apply your filters and confirm that your layout is good, and click apply at the top right corner, or you can use the enter key on your keyboard to quickly apply any changes. You can set it up so that a loaded data grid will not pop the filters again.
Can you show us what that looks like?
You bet. So I hit enter on my keyboard and it loads the foreign bond inspection tab. It confirms any filters that I had. Didn't happen to have any foreign bonds here, but if I flip over to a different data grid, it's going to immediately load my filters. Here I could hit enter to apply any filters as well. And then when I flip back to foreign bond inspections, it looks like I have the setting toggled such that I didn't save on my data grid, but there is a setting there that lets you bypass those filters once you confirm the first time.
And that's located in the tools options choices.
Right. Something else a little unique about PCS 114 is we modified how we're treating routes, specifically in regards to how we're sending them to the field computer. When I look at my data grid here, you'll see that I have a few test points in the route in the order that they're in here. They're all on row code T1403. That's because in the hierarchy, T1403 is the only row code that I have selected.
And that's normal kind of standard behavior.
Absolutely. If we go over to field computer send, you'll see that when I load this route, by clicking apply, I have different facilities. From different rows showing up in my field computer send section at the bottom. What we're doing now is for field computer send, we're packaging all of your facilities in a route regardless of your hierarchy selection.
Nice. So if I've spent the time building out a route, I want to just send it quickly to my field computer. I don't have to go over and make all the selections in my right-of-way hierarchy first.
You bet.
Okay, very nice.
It could be challenging, especially when you have lots of interconnects or laterals, or maybe it's a gathering system that's just a nightmare from the hierarchy perspective. We're easing that burden a little bit in PCS 114.
And it looks like I still get the option to filter and sort if I just wanted to send out the 1403 line.
Absolutely, yeah. We can still left click and hold control to pick individual facilities, or shift click between a range. You could apply filters. All those things are still available. Something that is a little unique here is there's a couple different options that we didn't have before. We have this predefined repair codes checkbox now. What this is designed for is sending your Allegro survey with pre-populated maintenance items so that you can have multiple maintenance items for one facility in the field.
Okay.
An example of that would be for a leak survey. So I go to a bank of meters, and it's one geographic location, it's one facility in PCS, but I may have multiple leaks or multiple repairs to do at that location. All of my pages on my Allegro will be populated with the repair code pick list that I've already defined and fielded in UDF customizations. In order for this box to pop up, you'll have to have that set as a pick list. It's going to preload those pages with the first X number of maintenance items for the number of pages I've populated on my Allegro. And then the repair codes are going to become read-only. The benefit there is you're not going to be able to overwrite a previous maintenance item by choosing the same repair code like you could historically.
So we avoid duplications and potentially missing some of those records on the import.
Exactly. We're enforcing uniqueness when the survey is created. Okay. Another example of that would be for atmospheric corrosion. Let's say you have your pipe comes out of the ground, so you have a soil to air interface, you have a pipe support, you have a valve, and then there's another pipe support and your pipe goes back into the ground. From a PCS design perspective, you could build each of those as 5 atmospheric facilities. That would require 5 inspections for one geographic location.
And potentially reschedule the next year to 3 years.
Absolutely.
Okay.
What we can do is treat that as one atmospheric facility and still have the capability to evaluate the individual items that may need to be recoded or repainted by using predefined repair codes.
Yeah, I know that's one of the challenges that some of our customers have had, specifically because PCS wants to create those as unique locations, essentially. And I may not need to do anything or go out and visit the soil to air interface spot next 3 years. So I want to avoid that. So this is good.
Right. Something else on the right, we have a checkbox to include previous readings. Now, those of you that are familiar with the Allegro, this is separate from the previous reading that we're already sending packaged with the DAT file that you see in the bottom left corner.
Right, we're maintaining that behavior. That doesn't change.
This is actually something that helps us integrate with a companion application that we have called Survey Viewer. This is a toggleable setting. The default maximum number of previous readings is 6, but you can modify that maximum to pretty much whatever number you want.
Yeah, and that's done in our tools options as well. And so an admin would set that for the system.
Right, exactly.
Now we do have the capability there to privatize that, correct? Make that a private selection?
You bet, absolutely. I set mine to 6, and I would just hit send, and this could send to the Allegro, it could send to disk. It's actually going to create a new file type called an HST file. It's going to package all those readings and keep them in their own file.
Yeah, and I'll mention something there that those of you who are not users of 113 Axis or 114 yet, we package the files themselves, the DAT file and the VLS that PCS creates to go to the field computer. We package those up in a folder structure now. That was done in 113 to take advantage of image management and our notion of we're going to be adding and collecting pictures in the field, connecting those to the location and the inspection in our image management process on the QX in particular. And then bringing those back in. And we needed a way to organize those on your Allegro and keep all the images from overrunning essentially into other surveys. And so we create a folder with the same name as your DAT file that you're going to create here, and then package that together. On the Allegro, we create a few additional files like the header and the index file, for example. So you're saying also include this new history file in that package.
Exactly. I've already sent this survey to my computer and preloaded it in Survey Viewer. And those of you that are familiar with Survey Viewer in the past are going to notice some pretty major changes to the user interface right off the bat. You can see that a lot of these buttons here have become larger. We also have a collapsible menu now. I could snap this on the far left-hand side so that I can view more data. The intent of reskinning this application is to make it touch enabled so that I could use a tablet or Microsoft Surface Pro.
And we have a lot of users starting to use that.
And use my touch screen to navigate the application. The rest of Survey Viewer looks pretty similar as far as the functionality goes. I could view my DAT files that I've already evaluated on my Allegro, confirm the readings before bringing them into PCS Axis. You're also going to see this new button here on the far left that says Previous Readings. If I click that button on the far right-hand side, it's going to show me all of my historic readings back to the maximum number that I allowed for.
So up to that potentially 6 number that you included.
You bet. If I had already taken inspections on this DAT file, I would also see my inspection from that DAT file in this chart here on the right. As you can see on the x-axis, the farthest to the left is my most recent reading, and as we go to the right, I get older and older. Gives you a great insight into if the reading that you're taking out in the field is an anomaly, if it's trending in one or other direction.
And it looks like you have structure, casing, and form buttons over there on that chart. Can you tell me about those?
You bet. So we're going to give you the capability to go in and look at some of the other pipe to soil readings that you're taking at those facilities as well. We can still see our structure readings. Those are in a separate graph here. But if I want to look at how my foreign readings are trending over the years as well, it's as simple as just tapping the other field button. I can also just look in the data grid here and look at all of the individual records in their entirety. If you want to dig into things like inspection remarks or technician, all of that historic information is there, and it's all packaged in that HST file.
And it looks like the fields that are displayed there for the history files align with the DAT file prompts that you've sent over.
You bet, absolutely.
Yeah, for those of you that are survey viewers, it's still our offline companion product to PCS. And the notion behind that is we understand there's a need for access to this offline trending data, and we've packaged that in a way that you can use this application in the field in that fully offline mode. So those users that have Surface Pros or laptops or really anything that's running a Windows operating system, Windows 10, can take advantage of this historical information now in the field. We've even seen some users kind of pre-bundle a DAT file that's maybe more than they're going to survey and just keep that on their laptop with them in the field for reference and occasionally updating that.
If you're sending lots of historic readings, that HST file can get pretty large pretty quick. Definitely a good idea to send large HST files to your computer and have those saved in a location so that when you complete your Allegro survey, all you would need to do is move your completed DAT file in the same folder as your HST file, and then you would be able to view that large amount of historic data along with your most recent inspections from your Allegro without blowing up all of the storage on your Allegro.
I'm going to pause for a second there, David. One of the things that I mentioned early on was that this is more of a discussion, and that's kind of why David and I are talking through this with you today. What I want to open this up to is you, the listeners and attendees here, the capability to ask us questions as well. I'm not going to open up the phone line necessarily, but we do have options if you're attending this through the GoToMeeting to type those in over in the GoToMeeting portal, essentially, and ask those questions. We'll try to respond to those as we're going through the presentation. We'd like to address them as we're on a particular feature because there may be additional questions that come up for other people rather than wait to the end. In fact, I have one right now from Paul, and he's asking, can you overlay structure, pipe to soil, casing, and foreign in Survey Viewer currently? Can you put all of those on the same screen at the same time?
You can't do that currently in Survey Viewer. We're compartmentalizing the readings so that you can evaluate them individually. The graphs could get really busy really quick, and you can see that there isn't a whole lot of room there. So the intent here is to view your survey that you've completed in the context of its own historical data. If we're looking at how my structure pipe to soil reading and foreign pipe to soil reading relates to each other, we have calculated fields in PCS that are going to tell us that. If my structure pipe to soil minus casing pipe to soil is within 100 millivolts of each other, then I have a shorted casing. We have a lot of derived fields that are around looking at these individual readings and making sure that you don't need to go out and resurvey or tweak your CP system. It's a good question.
Good. I've got another one from Theron. Is there a way to change the graph to read left to right?
Not currently. I could see that being something that's toggleable in the future. It doesn't seem like it's going to be too difficult to set that up.
No, in fact, I think in fact, both of these are questions that are great for our ideas portal as well. These are suggestions, and this is where we really want to build these products around your field needs. And it sounds like that's one that we'll take a look at within the next development cycle.
Absolutely.
All right, I've got one from Ben. can I switch the display order of the readings so they read oldest to left and newest to right? And it sounds like the same kind of theme that we're hearing. So guys, this sounds like a perfect example of solid feedback from the customers. We can quickly iterate on things like that.
The more vocal you guys are, the better products we can offer. So continue to be as vocal as you are.
Yeah. Same kind of question from Wendy. So I think we're hearing loud and clear that we need to provide that option.
Fair enough. All right, back in PCS, we'll go back to the data grid. I'm in the CPDM module. You can see that at the very top middle of my screen. And I have all my normal facilities, test points, rectifiers, foreign bonds, galvanic anodes, and tanks. But now I also have an additional facility type within the CPDM module. One of the features in 114 that we're allowing you to do is create custom facility types within existing modules. What's really the value of that? I have AC mitigation test stations as an example here. I think there's value in splitting off these different types of test stations where we're capturing different types of readings and grouping them together so that our reports are, we're not reporting across lots of different things and have 20 or 30 columns. It can become challenging to fit all of the fields that are pertinent on its own sheet of paper.
Right.
There's also, it's also going to give you the capability to assign different schedules. By default, we're going to go with test points. It's a point on a pipe like test points as well. So row code and mileposts are my required fields for location. We still have all the same information, inspection and maintenance records, but they're all facility-based custom facilities.
Yeah, and I think that's the key on this one, because there is a prerequisite to us being able to do this, and for you to have the capability, it's that custom module manager, the module called CMM. And so if I have that, historically I've been able to build custom modules. Now the challenge there is it's separate from my test points, and it's more difficult from a reporting schedule to align some of those things. And really from even looking at the data, I don't want to have to go to a separate module to look at a different facility type. In this example, AC mitigation historically would have had to been built that way. And so it sounds like the new feature gives me the capability to leverage that CMM and put AC mitigation here on the existing module that you're describing. And we expose that to other facility type modules as well, like valve, for example.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you had multiple types of valves, or if you wanted to store different pressure regulators or something in Valve Manager, that's you can customize it as much as you want.
Yeah, I've seen some things even on here for cleaning pigs, for example, was a request.
Sure.
To have that facility type.
Historically, with AC mitigation, for example, you may have wanted to survey it. You may have wanted to survey it on a different interval than just annually. It would have been challenging for the PCS schedule engine to schedule it correctly, because we're reliant upon typically you to define the test point type, which would be probably a pick list field. If you didn't populate it, then it wouldn't be scheduled right. By moving this over, a lot of the stuff that we're doing in the background is going to cascade over. And so it eliminates a lot of the user error that can happen by tracking multiple types of facilities in the same installed facility type. Lets you segment that stuff out.
And how do we expose that to all the users in the system?
So it's a public change that you're making. In modules and custom module management, we can see here in the CPDM module, I have the capability of adding, I think it's up to 10 facilities in this custom module.
Okay, so right here I can make it schedulable, I can make it routable. It's grayed out on our screen, but you can even make this range data if you had built it that way or needed to build it that way. And it sounds like then it's exposed to all users that have access to CPDM in this case.
You bet.
no additional licensing per user necessarily.
That's right. Something else that it's been challenging, flipping over to the Indirect Survey Manager, is trying to select the survey that you want. In the past, when you click your selected continuous survey drop down, we were sorting by start date, and we gave you the earliest start date first. So if you had 20 or 30 close interval surveys online, your newest one was at the very bottom. That was kind of challenging.
It was a big challenge. We heard a lot of feedback on that, especially as you've added more and more CI surveys. In this case, the list gets lengthy.
You bet, absolutely. What we're allowing here is search capabilities, filter capabilities, and sort capabilities. Just by left clicking, I resorted my start date. I could do that for multiple fields. I can click this little filter icon and choose individual surveys this way without having to fight a scroll bar on the far right. That's going to be the same for all of our close interval survey types that you see across the top, including this guy, which is also new to 114. So we give you now the capability to bring in your smart pig data, your ILI data, and store that in PCS. The way that we have built out all the columns is such that it aligns with a PODS database. So it's easy to share that information back and forth between those two systems.
And that's a first for us. Building that table structure kind of behind the scenes in the PCS database in that pod structure, kind of the baseline pod structure. We know there's variants out there, but doing so in a way that then is, as you mentioned, easier to work with on the other side for the pods group if we're sharing that data. Yeah, I'd say we've exposed the inline inspection option here as well within the ISM module. So to kind of keep in that theme of providing you a little more benefit or bang for your buck, essentially, you can now take advantage of this immediately with 114. Before version 7, we had it built out into its own module, so there's additional cost per user there. We found that potentially could be limiting in some ways, and while we'd love to add as many things as we can and provide you benefit, this is one area where we thought, let's keep it in line. It's range data, similar to CI. It's distance-based, essentially. And so I'm going to now be able to graph this, throw it on the reports with my CI or DCVG data, so I can see what's going on both on the inside and the outside of my pipe.
We're going to give you a lot of options for, of course, we're going to have the PCS graph. So you can view the data along with close interval surveys. Mm-hmm. Going forward, we see using Survey Manager to visualize this pigging data is going to be the solution. That's kind of our space, for those of you unfamiliar with it, where we're working to help us visualize large data sets and overlay them and align them. I see that as the future of viewing this ILI data.
Yeah, in fact, we've had a question on the graphing capability, the trend analysis that you showed in Survey Viewer, and do we have expanded options there, which is great to hear. We really want to hear feedback about that. It's not currently a capability inside PCS, but as you're mentioning, Survey Manager is really that space that we want to start layering in the visibility components. How do I look at historical trends over time in conjunction with all the other data components that I may have? ILI being a key one of those. There's advantage to us aligning things maybe by well visually that I can't do in a graphical nature here on PCS.
Right. One of the last things that we're going to talk about is an enhancement around bridging, but I want to start by going to email notification. We have an email notification. Historically, we've had this. the capability to granularly define when and how often any of our PCS reports are run, as well as who they're sent to, and if you want to send no data or not. Some of you may be familiar with this. Version 7 users, if there are any on the line, you had something kind of similar, but you were very limited in the options that you had. Mm-hmm. We've expanded that feature a lot in PCS Axis, and we've also taken this section, the schedule frequency section, and applied that in some other areas of the application around bridging.
Yeah, we had a lot of feedback from this particular section, those users that were taking advantage of email notification, that they wanted that same robustness in the bridge. And so it's great to hear that we've added that capability in bridge and other areas.
You bet. But before I switch over to bridge, I just want to kind of point out some of the logic that we build in here. I have two email reports. One is facilities that will become delinquent this month. One is facilities that will become delinquent this week. For the facilities that will become delinquent this month, I have only two recipients. So it's going to go to each technician at the beginning of the month, and they'll see a list of what will become delinquent if they don't survey it this month. On the delinquent this week, I have it being sent daily to both technicians and also to me. So I can make sure that they're taking care of those readings before they hit that compliance due date. Some of the logic that you can bake in here, it's a pretty powerful tool that you guys have. Enough about that. Let's talk about the bridge. Here I have a couple bridges built, a couple different types. One of them is an external bridge, which is a feature that we included in PCS 113 to allow us to export data straight to a SQL table rather than dumping it to a text file or to an Excel file. Just below the name here, we can see that we have very similar option that we saw in email notification. In the past, you could schedule your bridges, but they were daily. They had to be daily. Right. We couldn't do them weekly or monthly or every third Tuesday or whatever you wanted to do. We're giving you the option to do that now. And we're also displaying, once you set up those options, we're displaying the schedule that it's assigned to in a readable manner. So you don't have to go in and
to understand.
You don't have to go in and digest this menu every single time you want to figure out when your next bridge is going to run.
Yeah, another key question we had from users was, when's this thing going to start? We had kind of this odd in-queue determination there, and it looks like we're making it far more legible and readable.
You bet. So this isn't only for our external bridges, it's also for basic bridges and bullhorn bridges.
And while you're transitioning on the export to table, it's a new thing we introduced in Axis 113, and we're seeing a lot of use out of that from our power users, particularly for those that are transmitting or sharing that data to GIS systems, for example, because it puts the information in a consumable way for other systems. Historically, you've had to try to figure out, if you did, the metadata structure we have in our SQL tables, and it's not great to hit the main database directly while your users are in there and you're trying to export the same data they're looking at. So by doing this export to table, it's really putting it in a secondary database structure as well as a table, but it's also providing the captions that we include. So you're not having to understand what our field definitions are behind the scenes. We're going to use your language and your wording, especially if you've changed any caption titles. We'll leverage that and put that in this export to table. But we'll also include the calculated fields that normally don't get exported other than through a report, or shown on a grid, but are not presented typically to other systems. They're not hidden in our tables anywhere. We actually don't do the calculation until we show it to you. And so all those values now get to be passed over. And so other systems can take advantage of those calculations as well and not have to rebuild them.
Absolutely. Our bullhorn bridge is loaded. We can see here that we have the exact same scheduling options that we had in the export bridge and email notification. I have mine to set up to run every other month on the 7th day. So I'm assuming I have a good packet there in that first week. It gives me time to fix any problems I have before I grab my bi-monthly reading and commit it to my database of record. One of the other things that we did here is include a new radio button, facility ID mismatch. And we're also color coding some of the sections in the mapping portion. So I'll make this a little bit bigger for you guys. What this is telling me is that the facility ID of my rectifier, in this case, in PCS, does not match the facility ID of the RMU that is maybe attached to it, maybe it's not attached to it. What the problem that we're helping to resolve here is whenever you need to replace an RMU. It's been tied to a specific facility for however long, and then something happens, you need to send it in for RMA, you get a better RMU that you want to put on it. You take the other one off, you install the new one, but if you don't go to Bullhorn Web and update that Bullhorn facility ID, it's still going to be tied to that rectifier. If you were to reinstall it on another facility, when it reports those readings, it's going to tie readings from the wrong facility to that historic rectifier. That's really the challenge that we're trying to help you guys address here by color coding these facility ID mismatches. We're not going to automatically remove them though. There could be cases where you may actually want to have your facility ID and Bullhorn facility ID mismatch. So we're not going to automatically do that and force you to go in and modify all of your Bullhorn facility IDs once they're mapped. We're just going to give you a quick way to filter down and view where this type of inconsistency is occurring. The last thing I want to talk about is not necessarily in PCS, but really it's how PCS and Survey Manager integrate. We now have an export format so that your SVY files and DVY files that you've gone in and realigned and fixed spikes for and added comments, made any modifications, you can now export that in a ZSVY and ZDVY format. What that means for you as a PCS user is that you don't need to use the bridge to import that modified data. You can just use field computer receive to bring that stuff in.
That's good. So a couple things come up when we're talking about the facility ID. It's currently that relationship that's controlled and established between Bullhorn Web and PCS, and we know that there's some challenges around that. Unfortunately, there's two systems we're dealing with. One of the things we're going to do is make enhancements on the Bullhorn Web side. And for those of you who have attended a symposium or one of our user groups last year, you've heard this thing called Bullhorn Web Updates or Bullhorn Web 3.0. And so those are the things we're going to be fixing within future versions of Bullhorn and PCS, provide this tighter integration. We know it's a challenge because they're user selectable and user definable in some cases. And so we want to make a better way to pass this data. This is a first step towards doing improvements in that arena to provide you at least some visual indicators that David mentioned that something's out of alignment, something's not lining up correctly. And so we'll make continued steps towards that, eventually providing some user non-selectable and things you can lock down as far as IDs are concerned that'll make transferring data back and forth between these systems a lot easier to manage and more difficult to mess up. David, on the facility ID, when we come to that, what are some best practice maybe around things I shouldn't do with facility ID?
Yeah, so definitely the biggest one that stands out in my mind is not using all the special characters across the top of your keyboard to identify your facility ID. In particular, using an and sign. We found that PCS doesn't really like and signed in this particular feature, and that's something we're working to resolve. But if we're sharing this data with other systems, and as we're giving you the capability to do that, special characters are sometimes difficult for them to consume because typically they're restricted a lot of times for the coding language that they're written with themselves. Mm-hmm. So you want to kind of use plain text. Numbers are great, underscores, hyphens. Those are all great, but stay away from all of the ones off all the special characters across the top of your keyboard.
Yeah, no, that's a great one because, like you mentioned, those can be interpreted by some other systems as actually a coding behavior, and they may start to do things and start to manipulate the data based on that special character. That also makes it a little cleaner and easier to read. A couple questions come up about asking, can I as a PCS user recaption those fields, like Bullhorn Facility ID?
Those are actually default, so you won't be able to recaption those. We trued some of that up. If y'all recall, in the past, this was actually client ID or client serial. Mm-hmm. We've actually tried to align that stuff for you so it makes a lot more sense. Yep. Now, if you had recaptioned facility ID to something else, then we can't do much for you. But we tried to clean that up. If you guys have any suggestions about what you think it should read or what makes more sense, definitely let us know. Be happy to make some modifications to the naming conventions if they make more sense.
Mm-hmm. We had a question earlier that I wanted to address, and it's about the email notification that you showed us. I'm going to put a poll up real quick and get some feedback from our listeners and see if you can look over to your GoToMeeting windows for everybody and see if you have access to that poll. It should appear on your screen, and you have the option to tell us and provide us some immediate feedback. The question around that is, what other formats would you like to see email notifications sent? And so currently we do it as PDFs. And so we get some varied feedback on this, and I'd love to find out from you guys exactly what you're wanting. And it looks like as information's coming in, Excel seems to be the trending leader on that. A couple open to CSV or the flat file format version of that, but XLS or something that's manipulable in Excel seems to be the clear front runner on that. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and close that, and we'll kind of get back. Do you hear the same feedback, David?
Absolutely, yeah. Especially with people who are more comfortable with Excel, they prefer the format to be that way. And it makes a lot of sense because it's in a format that you can drill down and resort and merge up with other spreadsheets that you may have, or run pivot tables, or there are so many options in Excel that a PDF just doesn't give you.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, thanks for the immediate feedback on that. It really helps us on the product team kind of drive some quick changes if we can overcome it. All right, so we try to keep these things to around 45 minutes to give you guys opportunity, especially around lunchtime, to grab some food if you need to before you head back. Please feel free. Any quick last questions, send them in. We'll see if we can address them here in the next minute or two. Looks like we may have covered everything, which is great. So I appreciate it. Well, I'll go ahead and close this out. We really do appreciate it, spending your time with us today. We're going to go back. I'm going to throw up on the screen our ideas site, and we'll give you access to that and say, please give us your feedback, share. We can all see on the product team, and actually you guys can see each other's comments there and ideas, and there's a voting option and capability in that site, and we help use that to drive changes with our development cycles. One of the things that you'll see going into this next year is we're looking to improve the release and the cadence we have with PCS. And so you'll see our updates come probably every 6 months or so. We understand that everybody's not going to be able to upgrade. It's fine. You can skip one or many if you want, but we're trying to at least put some of these features and benefits that you guys see in the features into your hands at a more rapid cadence. All right. Well, thanks for sharing this information with us, David. We appreciate everybody's time, and we'll talk to you soon.